Now, many people believe that all of the attributes of such a nefarious haunt does exist down in the tunnels. Some of us might believe that they're not contained below, that they can, sometimes they do, reach us up here on the streets. So if anybody is sensitive, be aware. On that note, I hope that everybody is ready to have a haunted hoot. I encourage questions. Let's get spooky. One of the most haunted spots in the United States. Have you ever been on a ghost tour? Awesome. We're standing in front of the Merchant Hotel. But we are not going to discuss the haunts that are said to be inside of the Merchant until the very end of the evening. Because there's no better way to begin this tour than by discussing the haunts that are said to be directly below your feet. Right here where we stand below our feet, about 8-9 feet below, is where you can tour the Shanghai Tunnels. Anybody know about that tour? If you want to take that tour, do not search Shanghai Tunnel Tour. Go online, search Old Town Brewing or Old Town Pizza. It's in the literal Shanghai Tunnels. You do have to sign a waiver. I'm going to share one of the many reasons why as I tell you about our tunnels. So when our city was founded in 1851, we were not part of the Union. We did not have any roads. It was a muddy, sloppy mess out here. Quickly, the need arose to transport goods from waterfront to storefront, and instead of constructing roads, they decided to tunnel below the city. We know of roughly 20 blocks of an intricate system of tunnels that looks just like our roadway system. So imagine every block having a huge basement. And that basement separated into different partitions, if you will, and then what would look like streets underneath the streets, connecting them with access to the waterfront. Now, the city of Portland would like everyone to believe that they have all been filled in and that there's no purpose for them today. I'm not suggesting this, but if you were to explore the waterfront, you just might find one of the few remaining access points that still exist to this very night. They say that in 2003, there was a local man walking along Oak Street, a couple blocks away near the Benson Hotel, when suddenly the sidewalk gave way below his feet and he dropped 8 to 9 feet below, and he found himself in the Shanghai Tunnels. Now, there are a lot of people who believe the tunnels were constructed specifically for trafficking humans and vice. But there are even more people who say that's simply not true. They say that's hogwash, fairy tales, because they believe exactly what the city of Portland wants us all to believe, that the tunnels were only ever used to transport goods and supplies. In the 1960s, when they started investigating, they found evidence of a mass organized human trafficking trade operation which was occurring for years. Dozens of trap doors throughout the city. Now, these trap doors to the unsuspecting victim, they would have no idea they were standing upon them. It looked like any other portion of the wooden floor. They would entice these men, logging hopefuls, young, strong men, coming into the city looking for work. They would come into the saloons, the alcohol was cheap. But if the victims and the witnesses didn't willingly drink themselves into oblivion, they had plenty of knockout pills. They wanted everybody wasted. Once everybody was wasted, once the pickings had been primed, a barkeeper shopkeep would pull a lever, which would release a latch. When the latch was released, the weight of the men standing upon that trap door would make it fall open, and the victims would drop into what was called drunk tanks. And that was an 8 to 9 foot drop. And then the door would slam shut, and there was absolutely nowhere for them to escape. Now, the other thing they found in the tunnels, thousands of pairs of cork boots. Cork boots are the boots worn by loggers. These were leather boots with little metal steel spikes at the bottom of them, much like cleats. When they dropped their victims into the tunnels, they were knocked unconscious. They would remove their boots. That way, if they tried to run away, well, they quickly found that the tunnels were covered in broken glass. The ships and the captains coming into the port of Portland had an endless need to purchase enslaved crew members. And lucky for them, Portland provided an endless supply. With the logging industry booming, we had more loggers and logger hopefuls coming into the city than anybody could keep track of, and these men made the ideal victims. They were strong, they were able-bodied, and even better yet, nobody knew they were in town. Nobody would miss them, and they sold for a lot of money. Back then it was $50, but that's the equivalent of $1,600 to $1,800 current U.S. currency. They say that the law, the politicians, and the business owners were all in on it. Now, when those men fell through that trapdoor, the act of the fall itself, this was another logger's term. They called it a dead fall. But in this instance, it was literal. So the men who were not strong, or the men that took a pretty nasty injury in that drop, and it happened often, they were considered damaged goods. They couldn't be sold, nor could they be released. So the lucky ones, the few lucky ones, were killed immediately. More often than not, they were left to die a cold, agonizing death down in the tunnels. The strong men, they were sold to the captains on a 2 full voyage contract. That means that the captains owned these men, as they were required to sail from Portland to Shanghai, China, to Portland twice, and this voyage could run 6 to 8 years. And the chance of survival was nearly zero. Many of these victims didn't make it off of the Willamette or the Columbia. They were required to sign a contract saying, "You own me for the next 2 full voyages." When the food supply disappeared, the crew members became the food supply. And the first of the crew to become the ship's dinner would be those who were nearing the ends of their contracts. It was an absolutely tragic operation, and it occurred for years. The first tunnel was dug in 1850. They were at their height of use between 1870 and the mid-1890s, with 1941 being the last time that the tunnels were used for anything official at all. Now the numbers, those who deny the operation, they also readily admit that there was trafficking. They also say maybe only 1,000 victims per year were trafficked through the tunnels. Some people argue that evidence suggests upwards of 3,000 men per year were shanghaied and trafficked through the tunnels. Now that number is tragic, but it doesn't include the women or the children, which were also victimized and trafficked. They were just not technically dropped through trap doors. Now when you take a moment to consider how everlasting haunts are created, I don't think it's difficult to see why our tunnels are the #1 most investigated spot in the city for paranormal activity. Often when people go into the tunnels, they might find that their emotions, thoughts, sometimes even physically feelings, are overcome by thoughts, feelings, and emotions that are not their own. It can range from sudden sadness, uncontrollable sobbing, or sometimes it's sudden rage-filled anger. Often when people experience the anger, they tend to take it home with them, with some of them convinced that something may have followed them home because they experience unexplainable anomalies in their home domain. Other times people might feel a physical feeling, maybe how one might feel if they dropped through a trap door and landed 8 to 9 feet below, a busted shoulder. Some people even swear they've received bruises from those falls. And other times, maybe it's headache or nausea. But then we have those who emerge from the tunnels with very physical marks on their bodies, like scratches, bruises, and bite marks. And often this occurs to the staunch skeptic. So I told you have to sign a waiver. This was October 30th, 2021. There's a young lady who guides this tour. Her name is Natasha. She's a fantastic tour guide. She had a couple celebrating their wedding anniversary. They came in with a group of friends and family. They're doing the entire tour. Everyone's laughing, smiling, having a good time, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a piece of iron fell from above, hitting her right above the brow. She was instantly blooded. They had to go to the ER. This isn't uncommon either. They went to the ER. She received 12 stitches above her brow. As her husband began to go through the pictures he had taken, he took many pictures. Nothing was out of the ordinary in any of them until he got to the very picture when his wife was attacked by something seemingly unseen. So if you look here on the bottom right, they took her blooded face out. I think more people are frightened by the blooded human face than the unexplainable face that might be behind her. But if you look where that white arrow is, and sorry, my phone's a little dirty. That appeared. And if you look at the size, it's online if you wanted to see it. At least it was online. If you look at the size of that, it's probably like 4 feet in length. Yeah. If you take the tour with Natasha, she has dozens of these pictures if you wanted to see them. All of them taken by her guests. These are not pictures that have just been compiled online. All of them taken by her guests. Are you familiar with the EVPs? I know we were just talking about that. The electronic voice phenomenon recordings. That's when I don't do it, but I encourage my guests to do it. Communicating with things unseen. Often they will speak through electronic devices. If you want to hear some of those, go online, search Portland Underground EVPs, Shanghai Tunnels EVPs. You can find 30 to 40 years worth of EVPs all captured down in the tunnels. However, if you are daring and brave, and you would like to attempt to capture your very own EVP, in about 48 hours, the timing will be perfect. The moon will be full. The trap spirits here love to communicate on the full moon. And you don't need anything fancy, just bring your phone. Around the corner, you'll find a wrought iron gate that says Merchant Hotel. It leads to the old elevator access corridor. Hang out there for a few moments, and you're sure to capture your very own EVP. When National Geographic completed an investigation of our tunnels, they named them in the top 10 most haunted spots in the United States. The number 1 most haunted spot in the city of Portland. But what some people find concerning about that, our most haunted spot is not confined to one single location. It extends a minimum of 20 blocks throughout the city. Our very said to be haunted Shanghai Tunnels. Our next stop is going to be a location where some of the most compelling video surveillance